What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Morey Myles podcast. Today, we're going to be really going in depth into developing speed and also just really understanding your ability to get to top speed, right? Because one of the things that I started to realize with athletes is that as they're getting into their top speed, right, we work on acceleration, we work on the start, the first 3-4 steps, really being able to build speed. And then we also work on top speed. And what ends up happening a lot of times is there ends up being kind of a disconnect of when you're just working on your top speed, really being able to effectively utilize your foot strike, be able to really achieve running at a high speed very well. And then also when really isolating the start and the acceleration, being able to understand what it takes to build speed, right? The arm action, the landing, the foot contact time, just really understanding all the fundamentals there. But then when we put it all together, right? And this is where I started to really realize that there's probably really 4 different phases here when it comes to understanding how to run faster or how to really build speed, right? Because we talked a lot about, the 3 phases, which is going to be the start, the acceleration or the drive phase, and then the top end speed, right? And what we usually tell people is let's get really specific into those 3 areas so you can understand where within your sprinting you need to get better, right? So if you don't have a great start, really that goes into like the first 10 yards. You could even break it down to the first 5 yards if you want to, but typically first 10 yards is going to be that start. That's an area that a lot of people are able to improve pretty effectively. But that usually gets more into the start. Then we look into the acceleration drive phase. That's going to be depending on the test or what it is you're trying to achieve. That's going to be the next 10 yards to, up to 40 or 50 yards, right? If you're running like 100 meters, you're going to be accelerating for probably 40 meters at least. If you're running the 40-yard dash, you're going to be accelerating for like 20 to 25 yard, right? So just kind of depending on what it is that you're doing. Same thing for the baseball. Like when you're baseball, you're coming out of a 2-point stance. So it should be about 20 to 25 yards where you're accelerating, and then you just have to hold your top speed in baseball for a lot longer. But a lot of that, again, goes into what is it we're doing when we are accelerating? How can we more effectively accelerate to make it so we're able to get to our top speed to the best of our abilities? So, really getting into the ability to understand, like, as we are getting into that or from that acceleration into that top speed, what has to happen is we got to be able to maintain to the best of the ability, like the foot strike, the foot contact time, and how we are generating force into the ground. Okay, because what happens is, and I've started realizing this, I made a video about it a couple of days ago where I was showing that there's a lot of people that as they get from their drive phase into their top end speed, there's like a transition that happens there. There's a transition where now we start to like lift up our head. We start to get our chest to come all the way up. There's a slight difference and change in what we're doing within our running mechanics that is a adjustment from that drive phase into that top end speed. And that's why I say I feel like there's 4 phases where you got to get into that transition phase and really understand how to effectively transition from your acceleration phase into your top end to really make sure that you're doing that the best that you can, right? Really making sure that you are able to get to a speed that is going to get you the results that you're looking for. Okay, because what we see too is we'll see people that try to get through that acceleration or drive phase too early and really pop right up into their top speed, right? That'll look like within the first 3 or 4 steps, your chest is already really upright, your chin is really already really high, you're lacking very effective arm swing, especially coming forward. We don't have very good reach within the front side mechanics. Those are the common things that we'll see with people that are not effectively going through their drive phase. And then when we see people that aren't effectively transitioning from their acceleration or drive phase into their top speed, what we'll end up seeing there is going to be the hip pretty far behind. We'll also see the foot landing pretty far out in front of us. We'll also see the heel touching the ground first, or there just be a very distinct change in where the weight is being distributed within the foot. So we'll start off landing in the acceleration or the drive phase more towards like the front part of the foot, ball of the foot. And then as you're getting into the top end, we'll see that start to shift back into maybe more midfoot again. a lot of times really into the heel, right? And that just comes from just not having that really active ankle, right? And not maintaining that active ankle action and getting into plantar flexion as the foot is striking the ground as well as we could. Okay, so just being able to get that a little bit more effectively, I think, will make a big difference for a lot of people that are potentially struggling within their sprinting. And like I said, I mean, I want to go a little bit too into the programming side of this and how you want to set yourself up in order to really continue to excel when it comes to speed development and speed training. So a couple thoughts that I have about just athletic performance in general that I think have been beneficial for me in the training that I've done with teams and with athletes and making it so we're getting a consistent amount of results there. And really what I've been training the most actually when it comes to in-person is actually soccer. I obviously have a very extensive background with football. My dad was a football coach. I grew up playing football. I work with a lot of football athletes and really work with a lot of football teams too, both quarterbacks as well as receivers, running backs, linebackers. I mean, when you work with the whole team, now you're talking about linemen. I mean, you get the whole gambit. But I work a lot with quarterbacks when it comes to developing a program to help improve their upper body strength and upper body power and being able to help them maximize that. Now, when it comes to just speed performance, and really what I've noticed with soccer players is when it comes to their performance on the field, just giving them, and also their speed performance, just giving them the upper body strength that they need, right? Like the upper body strength that soccer players need is very similar to the upper body strength that quarterbacks need, right? You don't need to be doing a ton of bench press or getting really bulky in your upper body. You need to actually be able to maintain great shoulder range of motion. But if you don't have great upper body strength as really any athlete trying to run fast, then you're not going to be able to run as quickly. There is undoubtedly coordination between your upper body, like the shoulders, your lats, your anterior delts, and even your biceps and your triceps and your arms that have to be active and have to be strong in order to create as much force from that shoulder joint through your core, through your obliques, into your hip flexors and hip extensors, and then through your hamstrings, your quads, your calves, your anterior tib. All those things need to be really strong in order for you to effectively strike the ground with as much force as you can. So if you're a soccer player and you're not working on your upper body and you want to be able to get faster, then you're really not doing everything that you can to get faster. And another thing that I think is important when it comes to being able to maximize performance, a durability thing as well, like how often you are able to stay on the field. How healthy are you as an athlete, right? There's a football team that I'm working with where I was talking to the coach about it today, and we're actually going into week 8. And there's been a couple guys that have obviously been banged up, but going into week 8 from a technical perspective, we haven't had any missed games because of injuries. So basically everybody has been healthy enough to play for 8 weeks, right? So that's a huge advantage now when it comes to performance, right? We could talk about performance metrics when looking at a group and how fast they are and how strong they get and how much they clean and squat and blah, blah, blah. And by the way, too, I do cleans with that team. I know there's people out there that are talking about how, doing cleans is not good for football players or not good for field sports and how it makes it so you're more at risk for injury, blah, 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 blah. And while, I do think that there is some truth to that, I don't want to make it seem like, oh, yeah, we should be doing all Olympic lifts and Olympic lifts have 100% carryover. Because I don't believe that either. I do think you need to be able to work in athletic movements with the power development training, but I don't think getting away from that, the power development training is 100% necessary either, right? I mean, we do hang cleans, we do hang snatches, we do split jerks, things like that from an Olympics lifting perspective. We don't do full power cleans from the ground. I mean, I don't want to say we don't do that. We do them at different times. But really, I do those, to be honest with you, more so to prepare them for when they go to college, because I know in college, a lot of times they'll have power cleans as a lift that they do. I'm not a huge fan of the power clean, and just a bit of a side rant here, but I think that you want to be able to definitely stay with some of those main power producing exercises, but you just need to have a lot of variability in what it is that you're doing, right? And not that every time that the athletes train, they need to be doing new created exercises from Instagram, but just that when they're going through a workout, we shouldn't just be doing 5 or 6 exercises, right? I see that all the time when people program is, you have maybe an hour 15 and, they'll only do maybe 6, maximum 8 things, bench press, let's say, and a shoulder press, just an upper body day, maybe like some pull-ups, a row, I don't even know how much other things they'll do other than that, right? I mean, may try to add in like a tricep or a bicep or something like that. Where when I do my programming for teams, there's a minimum of 12 exercises that we're going to be doing, right? Because I'll do a block main exercise, and I've talked about this in the past. Let's say it's going to be like a clean. Well, with the clean, we're going to have 3 different kind of sub exercises that you're doing with that. Could be a shrug, could be a wrist range of motion, shoulder range of motion, could be a rotation exercise in the mid back, could be a tricep. There's a lot of different things that you could do with it, but the concept is just to be able to isolate some of the muscle groups that are going to help with your improvement within the clean, and again, create that variability so you're not just doing one exercise, and also make it so the athletes have the expectation that you are going to be working the whole time. I don't like standing around, right? And me having ADHD and, needing to be able to be consistently active, it's like, it's hard to just stand around and not do nothing, right? You got to have a consistent amount of things that you have in the kids go through to make it so then you are, again, creating that variability, but also helping them improve within the exercises. This is the same thing I've talked about with sprinting a lot of times as well. You want to be sprinting, and that's why I have like the treadmill. But with doing the sprinting on the treadmill, we're also improving the hip flexors. We're improving the hip stabilizers. We're improving the calves. We're improving your landing. We're doing some jumps. We're stretching the quads or the hamstrings and doing different types of holds to make it so now when you sprint, you're able to actually effectively utilize what it is you're training in a way that's going to be specific to the changes that you're looking to have on the or within your sprinting mechanics. And you could work on that within your acceleration as well, your top end speed. And that's where, it gets beneficial, where you can get into more private training, just because now I can create something that's a lot more specific to your particular needs. And I do this from an online perspective as well as an in-person perspective, right? You send in video, I take a look at it. It's like, okay, your foot position when your landing is not right. We need to work on, that side hip flexor strength, or we need to make it so you have better tilt within the pelvis, or maybe rotation within the pelvis, or maybe a combination of both, or maybe we just work on the actual foot strike and the foot contact and have some drills to do that, or the backside mechanics and how well we're able to bend the knee, and do we have the right hamstring range of motion? Do we have the right hamstring strength? Do we have the right amount of quad strength? And then putting that in a wide variety of different types of actions, right? So we want to be able to see that in more of a kind of static position, maybe more like a stretch or a controlled, or maybe even some type of hold. Okay. We also want to see that from a concentric perspective, and being able to actually, depending on the muscle, but be able to effectively shorten the muscle, and then also the eccentric and lengthen the muscle. And do that with single leg. We do that with 2 leg. We do that in landing. We do that in jumping, or creating the force. We do that in being able to control or being slow in a bend, and we also do that in being able to be fast and explosive out of a range of motion. And so for different exercises, we put a different focus on different times for being able to really maximize the improvement that we're trying to see. And it's going to be different depending on the joint. It's going to be different depending on what it is that we are looking to improve. For instance, if we're going to, let's say, get a better, there's an athlete that I was working with that she had a ACL. She's probably like 9 or 10 months now out from the ACL. She did a lot of stuff to make it so she was back very quickly. So she's, playing games and is trying to get offers. She's in her junior year of high school, and already has a lot of offers, but is really trying to get some bigger schools that she had the goal of being able to get, and I think she's going to be able to get there. But on the foot that she was, had the injury on, she's still having a hard time going through full pronation of the foot, and a lot of that seems to be from just an inability to get the right tilt within the pelvis, right? So as we go on to the injury happen on the right, so when we see the left leg, when we're doing exercises where we're pushing off, right, a calf raise or a single leg jump, double leg jump, we see good mechanics within the foot where we're getting a distribution from like the supination, right? Keeping more of the weight a little bit more on the outside, having a good arch. And then as we're transitioning into pronation, getting good plantar flexion within the ankle. And then therefore from that good plantar flexion, also getting the hips to drop or shift, right? So as you're going into plantar flexion, as you're getting good extension out of that hip, you want to be able to see your weight shift from that left leg onto that right side, or getting ready to be able to get your weight onto your right side, right? So if you're pushing off your left, we want your weight to be coming to the inside part of the left. So then when your right foot hits, you're able to effectively distribute the weight there. We're going to be going through what's called a toe off phase on the left side, and we're preparing ourselves for foot strike on the right side. So we want to make sure some of those biomechanics are lined up, even if we're not actually doing foot strike on this particular exercise. We still want to see some of the biomechanics lined up correctly. But then when we're seeing the right side go through that same phase where we're transitioning from the supination into the pronation and then getting into plantar flexion of the ankle, or pushing off within the foot, we're not seeing that same ability to get into pronation on the right side. What we see instead is that hip really being locked into place, right? So we're not wanting to effectively really shift that weight to the inside. This is a common thing that we'll see within an ACL, because a lot of times when you have rehab, right, what people will tell you is like, we need to keep all of your weight on the outside part of the foot, right? You need to overly correct the issue, because when a lot of times when the ACL happens, it goes into the knee, goes into valgus, kind of collapses in. And so there could be an overtraining of keeping that foot in a supinated position, so then we don't get into pronation. Well, we do need pronation to be able to push off. Yeah, we don't want to see pronation when landing, but we do want to see pronation when toeing off, when pushing off, when jumping, right? When you're going through a single leg jump, you're transitioning. If you do it correctly, you're loading more into supination into your foot, and then you're pronating as you're jumping off, or allowing that ankle to kind of collapse in a little bit. We want to be controlled with it, right? We don't want to see a huge amount of collapse, but most of the time the issue when it comes to, this is sprinting and jumping as well, when you're landing, if you're not probably absorbing, then you'll immediately go into a pronation and immediately kind of shift that weight to the midfoot or even to the back of the foot. Well, when you're doing it effectively, we'd want to be able to maintain more of the weight on the front part of the foot, okay, or more towards the forefoot. And we'd want to be able to land on like the ball of the foot and then absorb into the outside part of the foot, right? And we do that by having a good stable ankle and being able to allow that shift to go from kind of that inside part of the front part of the foot to then to the middle to outside part of the foot, slightly back, right? The least amount of back as we can, so then we can effectively push right back off. That's what those high-level sprinters are able to do, is they land with their foot really very neutral, right? Some of them might be even more pronated when they land, okay? The more pronated you actually are when you're landing, the better, because now that allows your foot to go into supination when you're landing. And then as you go into that supination, now you're going to be able to absorb and then effectively, again, push off. And you want to be able to, as you're pushing off, not only see the mechanics that are happening within the foot and within the ankle as you're getting into plantar flexion, but are the joints above it working correctly, right? As we're going into that extension, we want to be able to see the pelvis, if we're on the right side, shift from the right to the left side. So we could see there's like a lot of stiffness going on within that right hip. So, we wanted to be able to really isolate that and improve that. And there's a lot of things that we have to be able to do to get there. And first, what we did was just get into the range of that back foot and start opening up the foot in general. Because I'm a big believer that it starts with the foot, right? If we can create more range and more control and more stabilization through the foot, that will translate into being able to move more freely in the joints above there. So that was really the main focus, is really starting to be able to isolate that part of the movement pattern to make it so then we would be able to see an improvement within the jumping, both within a single leg jump as well as within a 2-leg jump. And so just looking at those types of things, I think end up being really important. I mean, I put a big focus on in general on single leg stuff. I think is really important. I work the lateral stabilizers. I work the balance. I like to put a big focus on hamstring development, right? I'm like the hamstring development guy, right? Because the hamstrings, they control knee bend, right? At the end of the day, and they're really important when it comes to hip extension as well. And so if we can't knee bend effectively and we can't hip extend effectively, it's just really hard to be a great athlete without those two things, right? Without knee bending, without hip extending, okay? Because those go into speed, those go into acceleration, deceleration, loading, right? Being in an athletic position, being able to move side to side. And then a big part of that as well is going to be the vastus medialis. So that's that muscle that's on the front part of the, right above the knee. It's on the front part of the leg, right? And it's one of your quads, right? So if you think about your quads on the front part of your leg, the one that's right above the knee, kind of on the inside part of the knee, that's the vastus medialis. And really that muscle is important when it comes to like that last 15, 20 degrees of extension within the knee, right? And so a lot of times what happens is people that have knee pain, I mean, it comes from a variety of different things. One could be not effectively being able to control your ability to knee bend in the first place. And that could even go down into the tibialis anterior, which is the muscle on the front part of the shin. But I think that a lot of times, it ends up going into the vastus medialis as well and just not having a great ability to extend, right? And I see that as well within the elbow, right? I work with a lot of baseball players too, and I put a big focus on elbow extension, right? We want to be able to be very strong within the arm as baseball players and have, strong biceps, strong triceps, right? I think that the tricep muscle group is just kind of like the hamstring muscle group. I mean, there's 3 muscles in the hamstring, there's 3 muscles in the tricep. There's a lot of correlation within those two. And I really think that, one of the things that I've noticed is that there's a lot of people that can improve their speed by getting stronger within their tricep, right? The reality is like there's a lot of people that are not as fast as they could be because they don't have as much strength within their tricep as they need to. I talked about that a little bit with the whole upper body thing with soccer players. And so if you have, a strong tricep, but you're not able to extend the elbow all the way, then you're not really fully utilizing the muscle and the joint to its full capability. And you're also way more at risk for problems within that elbow joint. Very similar when it comes to the knee, right? If you're not able to effectively utilize both the vastus medialis quad muscle and getting into that last little extension, as well as be able to use the hamstrings to effectively knee bend or have strong hamstrings to effectively knee bend, then the risk of you having knee issues is way more, right? You're going to have a lot greater chance of risk when you're not able to really properly absorb into your the muscles that are going to be most important for those types of movements. And again, I think that we want to be able to understand that while we don't want to be bodybuilders and just only work on isolation type of movements, I do think that there's a big improvement that can be made when we have a little bit better understanding of how to isolate a particular muscle group and then therefore integrate it into a movement pattern, right? We want to start jumping higher, okay? In order to jump higher, there's a chain of different muscle groups that need to be effectively working together, okay? And in order for us to work those muscles together, we need them to be active. So if you're not typically using your glutes when you go into a hip extended type of movement, right? As you're going through your jump, if you're not typically using your glutes as you get into hip extension, you use much more of, let's say, your quads and your hamstrings, right? You're just much more of a quad hamstring dominant person. How are we going to get your glutes to be more active? Well, first we got to activate them, right? We have to get them to start to be a part of the connection between your brain's neuromuscular functionality, right? So now once we can create that function, and there's a lot of ways we could do that. Isolation of the glutes is a very easy thing to be able to accomplish. Glute bridges, hip extension. There's a ton of different things that you could do, right? Donkey kicks, things like that. Get the glutes to start to activate. Then get into some jumps, right? And then when you're jumping, really emphasize the glute action, right? And you could even shorten down the movement, right? Get into that last quarter of a jump, right? So you don't go through your full load. Everybody kind of loads for the jump a little bit differently, but let's say you don't have or let's say you load really deep into your jump, right? You get your hips all the way down to your knee height when you're going to jump, or maybe even below your knee height. And then you go from there. Well, you're probably not going to be using your glutes as much when you have that type of loading pattern, right? Because that just in general, when you do that, you're going to be recruiting and putting on stretch much more muscles within your hamstrings and your quads. So those are going to be much more of the muscles that are going to probably be active. Okay. But if you go and let's say hold on to like a bar or anything, doorway, something like that, and go through like a little bit shorter load and just go through again, like a jump, but just a lot shorter load, and really activate the glutes and really focus on being able to activate through there, and then just progress that through a time where now you get a little bit lower, and maybe even you change up how you load a little bit to make it so then you can more effectively activate within the glutes. Now you just recruit another whole nother muscle group, by the way, a very important muscle group when it comes to generating force when it comes to jumping. Okay. That same type of thought process, while, that might seem like an easy thing to be able to do, that takes time to be able to, integrate that into 2 legs, 1 leg, make it so that's something that you're doing when, running and, going through different types of jumping. I mean, jumping is not just 2 feet and jumping up. Right, there's a ton of variability that goes into jumping in itself. Right, there is just a regular 2-foot jump. There's a 1-step jump. There's a 2-step jump. Right, in the NBA when they test, they do a 1-step. Right, so you can take 1 step and then jump as high as you can. There's 2-step jumps. There's single leg jumps. There's running and then jumping on 1 leg. There's running and jumping off 2 legs. There is just a variety of different things that can come into play when it comes to jumping. Maybe you land and then you need to jump again. Maybe you need to really be running, stop, and then jump, right? All those things are different variables that go into you jumping. Well, we can't have, you not be familiar with those types of things. And we also don't want you to be training only to do one type of jump, just a standing vertical jump, and only get good with, let's say, activating your glutes through your standing vertical jump, and then think that, oh yeah, now you're good to be able to do a variety of different types of jumps and really make it so you could do and get the same results, right? Get the glutes active, get everything to be working effectively. You have to train all those different parts. So that's something that's going to take months, right? 3-4 months at least to be able to get the right activation within your muscles to make it so you could effectively use the glutes in all those different types of jumping actions. And then therefore, that's when you're going to start to see improvement, when you can now consistently recruit those glute muscles out of all the different types of jumping actions. Now your glutes are going to be much more part of your jumping pattern all the time, which is going to make it so every time you do jump, you jump with more force. As you start to do that, your body will start to adapt and you'll create more muscle. You'll be able to have a better connection within, from your brain to the rest of the muscle group. That pattern will become a much more effective pattern and efficient pattern, which will, lead you to being able to jump higher. Okay. Not to say that it'll take you 3 to 4 months to see results. You should probably start seeing results within 2 to 3 weeks, but to really see a big substantial change, something that will be like, oh wow, like your improvement has 8 inches in your vertical jump or something like that, that's going to take more time and it's going to take more commitment. Okay. And that's what really all this stuff is, right? If it comes to athletic performance, it's a commitment. It's not something that you're going to just be able to do by, listening to this podcast or watching this video or watching any of my YouTube videos, right? Like, yeah, you want to be able to understand it, but you're not going to be, and my goal is to make it so you can get to your goal faster, right? To eliminate the time barrier the best that I can. But at the end of the day, there is time that needs to be put into it. And, if you think that it's going to just happen overnight, that's not a reality. But is it possible to cut, months off of the training? 100%, right? You can go through the speed training and do it in a way that's not effectively addressing your particular issues, right? Foot strike, backside mechanics, frontside mechanic, foot position, arm action, whatever it ends up being, right? Acceleration, transition. You could work on that for months and not see the same type of results that, I could probably get for you in a week or a few weeks or maybe a month, right? And, the results that sometimes it takes people probably, months or maybe even years to be able to accomplish because they just don't know how to attack it, right? Like I am doing this all the time. This is what I do on a daily basis, right? Like I have people that are coming to me, at least I would say 5 to 10 people per week that are people that are looking to better understand what their mechanics are like, right? Like I do my free assessment, right? My free 30-minute assessment. Not all those people convert and end up buying the packages, and most of it ends up being price-wise, and I understand, or even time-wise can end up being a problem for some people. But the point being is, they come in and I'm looking to see what are the main things that we need to work on, right? And within that 30 minutes, my goal is within that free 30 minutes assessment is to make it so you walk out of there saying, I'm faster. Like I've gotten faster by implementing the things that he talked about. I could feel my speed improve, right? That's my goal. So in 30 minutes, I'm looking to do that. So imagine if I worked with you for a month, right? Like that's so much time to be able to really get in particular into what it is that you need to improve. The thing is that again, it's a 30 minutes, right? People want to come in and they think, oh yeah, he got a little bit of improvement right away. That's, I don't know. I mean, people come up with a bunch of different excuses, to be honest with you. I don't know if there's like one way to be able to really pinpoint everything because there's just so many different reasons. But, point being is what's the more difficult part is to get people to commit, right? Like people want to get 30 minutes and just want to see improvement and then that be it, right? Oh yeah, I saw improvement. Great. Like, I'm going to go and just have this improvement now for the rest of my life. And that's not how it works, right? Like, the reason that I do the 30-minute assessment is to show you the value in the training. But if you think that, just getting a little bit of, one time having me, show you some things within your running that now all your problems are going to go away, that's unrealistic, right? Like the reality is that there's a lot of things that end up going into a sprinting defect, right? Or a movement pattern defect, and being able to really work on it for a long period of time is what is going to be necessary in order for you to get the results that you're looking for. So just wanted to talk to you guys about a few different things there, really make some shorts out of this. So if you like the podcast, if you like the information, click that thumbs up. That really makes a big difference, or like the video. Share it if you have any friends or family that would benefit from the information. I know we went deep into a lot of stuff, and if you have any topics that you'd want me to go into, more in depth into, then I'd be happy to do so. I think next time we're going to go a little bit more into some like injury prevention stuff. But today I just wanted to put a little bit more focus on some speed development and what's important for speed development in a variety of different sports. Again, like the video if this ended up being beneficial for you, and we'll talk to you soon.